A very good evening, everyone. On this particular day, we are lucky to have Dr. Soumya Rani with us. Dr. Soumya Rani is the editor of Cactus Communication Mumbai. She is a multi talented personality with 7 years of experience as a speaker, beginning with her role as a DAAD Young Ambassador in 2017-18. She has been associated with academic institutions and has strong industry partnerships also. She is the proud entrepreneur and founder of her own startup. She has helped academic and research institutions in providing them a good research footprint. In her today's session, she'll tell us about harnessing AI ethically for scientific and writing and publishing. So, ma'am, welcome, and please guide our participants. How can we utilize AI for better writing and over
Thank
to
you.
you?
Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful introduction and the warm welcome, Professor. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. Give me a moment. So, the boring question again. Am I audible enough?
Yeah, ma'am.
The screen is fine. Okay. Good evening. So, it's a pleasure meeting you all, even if virtually this evening. Let's dive right in. I have been asking this question across institutions, across cities in India and beyond for the past 3 years. The simple question of if you recognize the face that you see on the screen. I expect you to, because this happens to be the face of one of my favorite actors ever. Some of you might recognize him as Doctor Strange of the Marvel series. Some of you might know him as Sherlock Holmes. Some of you might even be familiar with this project called The Imitation Game. And this actor in real life is none other than the ever handsome Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, this movie, The Imitation Game, is set in the World War times, World War II to be precise. This was the time when the Nazis, the Germans, they had an upper hand in the war. They were clearly winning the war for a lot many reasons. One of the key reasons was that they had this encryption machine called Enigma. Nobody could break the code, the Allies could not figure it out, and the Germans were clearly moving forward. It is at this juncture that an amazing English mathematician, proper nerd, by the name of Alan Turing, just a moment, I'm just checking the chat again. Alan Turing walks into the war scene and he and his colleagues go on to break the code of Enigma that brings the World War II to an end after a year or two. Now, this movie, The Imitation Game, is all about Alan Turing. What's special about this man here is Turing was not just a mathematical genius, he also did a lot of foundational work that earned him the title of one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence. When we are talking about world wars and Alan Turing, all this happened easily 6+ decades ago, 6, 7 decades ago almost. This is just to drive home the fact that yes, generative AI is all new, it's all glossy, but the terminology and technology of artificial intelligence has existed for 6+ decades. Just that it has never touched our lives, the lives of the so called common man, as much as this new version avatar of AI called the Gen AI has touched so far in all of these decades. How did that all change? We all remember November 2022 when OpenAI decides to unleash this beast called ChatGPT on us, and our lives have changed for ever in so many ways. We like it, we don't like it. The change is very apparent, and it has happened. ChatGPT, being the pioneer, being the face of the Gen AI revolution, has become synonymous with AI. So when you say Gen AI, we assume we're talking about ChatGPT. So what was so special about the Gen AI technology is how versatile it looked like, how all-knowing it was. The problem with know-it-alls is that they, even with people, these are the people who are very appealing when you meet them for the first time. But then as time goes by, you realize that, okay, they don't know everything after all. Yes, they do have some answers. They always come up with answers. They always pretend like they know what they are talking about and they have the worldly knowledge on all topics. But on close observation, we feel maybe it is not always true. That's the same thing that happened with ChatGPT as well. And this was not accidental because most of these Gen AI companies, They built for speed. They built to impress the masses and not exactly for accuracy, which means that anytime you ask a question, imagine if ChatGPT told you, I do not know the answer for every fourth question you asked. I don't think we would have been so enthralled by ChatGPT because ChatGPT seemed to have answers, even when the answers were not accurate, even when it was drawing answers from very bad sources, wrong sources, and quoting the wrong sources, but it still gave you answers. That is what we liked about ChatGPT and all of its cousins that followed. Unfortunately, that becomes very problematic when we look at AI for scientific writing and publishing, where scientific writing has to lean heavily on accuracy and the right sources. ChatGPT was just the beginning, and in the beginning of Jan 2025, we had an almost revolution in the Gen AI world with the introduction of reasoning models like DeepSeek. Not that DeepSeek was the first reasoning model, but then that was the first model that became widely accessible, as equally accessible as ChatGPT. And the fact that suddenly there are conversationalists joining the conversation around AI from mainland China, which means the conversation is no longer confined to the US and Silicon Valley, that did cause a lot of repercussions around the world, around how we perceive the technology and the companies associated with that as well. Now, did reasoning models improve on the so called hallucinations? Not necessarily. They kind of gave us a transparent view into how these models think in machine learning terms, but that did not completely eradicate hallucinations. Okay, so if that did not, did the advent of these agentic AI models like GPT-5, for instance, which are touted as the major stepping stone to autonomous AI, were they able to get rid of hallucinations? They definitely did reduce hallucinations by a huge extent, but hallucinations still persist even today with agentic AI. But even with hallucinations, why are we also excited about agentic AI? Because unlike traditional AI models, which could be used for the kind of single steps across a multi-step process, agentic AI provides the possibility where you can take very complex processes that have several steps, several varied steps across them, and the AI will be able to go from point A to C without much human intervention. Every single step of the process is inbuilt into the agentic AI, and that definitely is appealing, especially when you take up fields where there are multi modular processes that are involved to get any task done, say biomedical engineering, or simple tasks where you just have a collection of thoughts that have to go into a manuscript, but then that also have to be converted into a poster, for instance, where other AI, the traditional AI, would have struggled. Agentic AI would be able to do it seamlessly, but that does not mean that these AI tools have overcome hallucinations. Hallucinations where these AI pick up questions. They don't understand language, they don't understand your question. They are great probability models which just stitch together words to ensure that these words are in the right syntax to bring you answers which appear to be true but might not always be true. And this problematic phases of Gen AI are much more fundamental as well. When we talk about LLMs as a model, these models, they just function on playing around the probabilities of existing information, which means these tools are limited by the base data that they have access to and the ways in which the probabilities can actually work, which does not really bode well when we are talking about fields like research writing or research in general, where curiosity and running around to find the novel idea which nobody else has thought about forms the central tenet of this entire process called research. Now let's assume that we're not sitting across the screen, but rather we are sitting inside a single room face to face, and I ask you to draw out your notebooks, your pencils, and start drawing everything you see on the screen. And normally for this activity, I set around 60 seconds timeline. Now, even without doing this activity with you, I'm pretty sure that when asked to draw a house, most of you will draw a house that looks like this. Despite not living in a house anywhere close to this thatched roof, single room house that you see on the screen, this is how we still represent a house. This is what we were taught in our kindergarten days. We have not yet evolved our drawing around a house or these basic tenets of a sun, a mountain, a river, a fish, all through these years, despite having great exposure to the real world, everyday exposure to all of these elements. Now imagine a toddler who does not have as much worldly experience as you and I have, and we teach them this is what a house has to look like. So no matter where you ask them, when you ask them to draw a house, they are going to give us some variation of the same house unless they are a very observant child who do have access to the real. Now, this toddler I'm talking about is essentially AI because AI does not have the same access to the real world. They, excuse me for a moment. Is everything fine? Is my screen visible? Am I audible enough? Can we proceed?
Everything is fine, ma'am. Please proceed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Soumya, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So what was I saying? I kind of lost track there somewhere in between. But what I meant to say here is if you consider AI as this toddler I was talking about, who does not really have access to the real world, an AI model is limited by the data it is provided, the test data that it is offered, which means the knowledge that it pours out so effortlessly is also limited by the test data. A case in point being these set of images that were one of the earliest images that we got out of this tool called Midjourney, where you can simply give in a prompt and the tool gives you a composite image. When we saw these images for the first time, we were all amazed. I'm pretty sure you were as well, because this means we don't have to learn Photoshop anymore, and all images can be generated at your fingertips without much knowledge about design. The problem is when you take a pause and look at these images once again, and assuming that we're all sitting somewhere in the US, my question here is, do all prisoners look like this in the US? Or to rephrase my question, are most prisoners black in the US? Let's say you kneel down, you fall down, you scrape your knees, you walk into a hospital. How many of us would be treated by a nurse who looks like this? The more important question, why should a nurse look a certain way and why should a cleaner look something completely different? When the user did not ask for a certain kind of a nurse or a certain kind of a cleaner, this bias, this stark difference is coming from the test data on which these tools were designed. And this test data comes from human-generated data, which is ingrained with biases by default. Today, AI is everywhere. Any field you take, AI has an application. There is a very deep conversation around the use of AI. The problem is the technology is so fast that we are all still running to catch up with the technology. It is like running a race with Usain Bolt back in his golden days when no one could beat this man. You can only race for the second place. Now, what is wrong if technology is fast? When technology is too fast, every other conversation is lagging. It is said that when television was introduced for the first time, it took at least a few decades for the television to make its way into 50-60% of the urban homes in the US. But with AI, I guess we reached that level of penetration within a few months, which is dangerous because the technology is new. We have not yet understood all the facets. The conversations around the ethics of where the test data came from, the copyright issues around the content generated by AI, the environmental implications of overuse, over reliance on AI, all these conversations are lagging. Of course, the legal aspects as well, which means we will have to slow down, pause. The technology might not pause, but our awe for the technology can pause to enable us have these conversations before we can embrace AI for what it is. For an AI tool to be acceptable, to be at least considered as acceptable, be it in research, be it for teaching and learning, it has to at least rest on these 5 pillars. The first is where the tool and the team behind the tool, they have to be transparent. The way the tool operates has to be transparent. The data has to be legally acquired. The operations have to be legal. The output you get has to be fairly accurate. I am not aiming for 100% accuracy, but fairly accurate, and a transparent statement as to the level of accuracy the output will also help. And data security also becomes a key concern, especially when you're looking not just at research, but also when you're looking at AI for education. Data privacy is something of the utmost concern, considering that we want any data we give into these tools to remain safe, not to be just thrown around as test data for training these models. And for the tool to be trustworthy, it cannot be a black box. The process has to be understandable, at least to a certain extent. Even after 3 years, one conversation we keep having is that AI is not the magic wand that it is sometimes made out to be, but rather it is a mirror that reflects religiously whatever you project onto it, which means garbage in, garbage out. But the corollary is also true, where quality in, you can expect to get some amount of quality out, even if it is not 100% accurate to what we would expect with fact checkers and so on. So, how do I give quality in into these AI tools so that I get out quality? It all again boils down back to the basics, where we will have to engineer our prompts to ensure that we communicate our requirements to the tool very clearly. At what level am I asking this question? I can ask the same question as a grade 6 teacher, as a higher ed faculty, or as a researcher, or as a common man who is interested in knowing more about the topic. The context sets the tone for the output, sets the tone for the sources from where the information is picked out, and also how the output is designed or structured to cater to my specific requirements. And then to given the task, so the process of setting the task and the instructions sometimes is taken well care of in terms of agentic AI. Even then, there are still certain tenets that has to be placed and expressed properly, so that AI is guided properly from point A to B, where your prompts serve as the guiding flags to ensure the AI does not go astray and give you the kind of document or kind of results that you're looking for. So before we venture into this process where we can reacquaint ourselves with some of the AI tools that have been around for 3+ years now, the good ones where the teams are constantly building on the basic models, it is important to acknowledge that this entire AI ecosystem is complex. It has several layers to it, and it's evolving every single day. Not just the policies, the very models are also evolving along with it. Our understanding around how to use AI is also evolving alongside. And all of this is pretty complex. Our human brain does not understand all of this yet. So it is important to be curious, but then it is also important to have a healthy dose of caution alongside the curiosity when we use AI. On that note, and to add to the beautiful introduction, I'm Dr. Soumya, and it's a pleasure to meet you all here today. What I do majorly is I talk around AI for research and also AI for teaching, especially around how AI can be gently introduced into our classrooms without compromising the roles of our teachers, while also doing justice to our students as well. On the part of research, I'm pretty interested in introducing AI tools, specifically how they can be used ethically, and also how these tools can be linked to each other so that you have one seamless framework. You don't have to have 100 tools. You just have to pick 2 or 3 tools and find ways in which you can integrate them into one workflow so that your data migrates seamlessly from one step to the other until you finish your papers. The other part of what I do is I have a startup called Saumi Spau, where in addition to the webinars and the long form workshops, so we run these 10-day workshops on scientific writing and publishing, specific aspects of AI use and so on. We also have a small team of editors who handhold researchers such as yourself in the process of finishing your manuscript. We don't have tie-ups with journals. We can't promise you publications. We don't write your papers as well. This is not a paper mill. We are an editing company where we handhold the clients from the first draft to the final draft by helping them, giving them critical reviews, and handholding them through restructuring the manuscript, improving the language, fine-tuning the manuscript as required by the journal guidelines, picking out the right journals, ensuring that the reviewer comments are addressed appropriately, and so on. So all of these come together to have created a system which flows smoothly to not just train but also assist participants beyond these training sessions, so that they publish better legitimate manuscripts. So when we talk about AI for research, one of the first places where AI can help is, of course, in the first step of literature search and review. And one quick switch you can make is, instead of starting your literature searches with Google Scholar, you can start it with Semantic Scholar. What makes the difference? Both of these tools, they kind of look and feel the same kind of an interface where you start with a set of keywords and the tools give you a set of papers. But Google Scholar is keyword based, heavily keyword based, whereas Semantic Scholar, as the name implies, it works on semantics, which means this tool looks beyond the keywords, looks at interactions, looks at the frequency, repetitions of the keywords, which means that if you're lucky, instead of ending up with the tens of thousands of papers on Google Scholar, you might just have to deal with 400, 500 papers that are much more specific to your search string. In Google Scholar, the aim is, when you want to go wide, when you want to kind of stumble upon papers that are even marginally related to your questions, yes, Google Scholar might still work great. But when you are focused, when you want lesser number of papers, but more closely knit papers, then Semantic Scholar is a good start. Start with Semantic Scholar, finish off with Google Scholar is how I would like to do it. Now, when you have narrowed down on a set of papers, it doesn't make sense to keep running back to the ocean and fishing wide and far. You have a set of papers, and literature essentially is just one unified story. You have to find a way to find the different threads that are hanging around the story. And when you bring all of those different components together, your story is complete. You don't have to worry about what is beyond your storyline. When you're at that point, normally by convention, we find literature through what is called as citation mining, where when I'm reading a paper, I try and find all related papers. And the simplest way to do this is to follow the track of references and citations in the backward and forward direction. And this is called citation mining. How do I do it traditionally? Read a paper, find the reference, Google, find the paper, and then take a simple decision. Do I save the paper? Do I not save the paper? Now, this entire process is pretty straightforward. No creativity whatsoever required, has a clean set of rules, which means an AI usually does a much better job than you can. And that is why tools like Litmaps have become popular for finding directional literature, not far and wide, but literature that is laser focused to find just the different threads of your story. You can start with a set of keywords if you want. You can start with a list of papers. Ideally, starting with a list of papers, what works. But when you start with even one paper, this is the first output that you see, where based on this one output, I have an entire set of 20 papers. Each of these circles represent a paper. And I also get to see the citations and reference connections here. Now, these 20 papers are heavily curated to have the highest connections with my paper, and Litmaps is designed for your decision-making process as well, which means I get to read the abstract and the title of the paper. The title is a hyperlink. I can just click on the title and I'm taken to the original journal page where I can read the full text if so required and take a simple decision. Do I save this paper? Do I not save this paper? I save the paper and then I use this new updated version of my collection to keep finding more and more heavily linked papers. Now I have introduced at least two tools. One is Semantic Scholar, one is Litmaps. When do I use what? When I'm still fishing around, when I still am not sure of the direction I want to take for collection of my literature, Semantic Scholar looks good. But when I have decided on a collection of papers, I've decided this is my story, this is where I want to be a part of, where my research project is going to be a part of, then using directional tools like Litmaps makes a lot of sense. Litmaps is just one of the tools. You also have alternatives like Connected Papers, Insightful, Research Rabbit, and so on. I do know that Google Scholar recently overwent, had an overhaul where they very lately decided they're going to introduce this AI search feature called Scholar Labs. What I feel is this is too little, too late, because there have been other tools like Consensus that have been doing this for at least 3+ years, where when you ask a question, the tool gives you the consensus of what literature feels like. So when you ask the yes or no question, where do the literature lean towards? Are most literature telling me yes, most literature telling me no, and so on. And you also get a nice detailed answer like the one you see on the screen, What is special uh, workaround with prompt engineering? I just had to set a few filters, and the answer I get is a properly summarized answer from multiple papers. Even with the first summarized line, you see it is not from one single paper, but from two different papers. And when I'm on the live tool, I can just hover my mouse over the numbers here, and it will take me to the original paper, ensuring that I don't have to trust this AI tool. I have the original source. I can verify the information for myself before I decide to use it on my paper draft. Two questions here, or rather, two answers, two clarifications here. The content here is not exactly plagiarized. It is a proper summary, just that it is an AI generated summary, which means, technically speaking, this is almost plagiarism free content, which I could use as it is on my manuscript. But I cannot, because this content, though it is not plagiarized, it is still AI generated content, and there are strict guidelines against using AI generated content, which means this is a great starting point. If I'm staring at a blank page, if I'm crippled by writer's block, I no longer have to be, because I have a starting point from which I can build on my ideas, I can build on my framework. But over reliance on this content will be detrimental. At the end of the day, when my manuscript is passed through a checking tool like Turnitin, both for Plag and for AI content, it might not show up well, because though this content will eventually be edited out over the process of manuscript editing, it is still AI generated content. You should have a system in place to make sure that you mark AI generated content on your manuscripts when you use them on your drafts. The next set of tools take this answering my research questions one step further, where tools like ELISA don't just give me a summary answer, they help me create what is called a literature matrix, where my question is answered based on 100 papers. Say, for instance, when you're using a tool like SciSpace, you have 100 papers that are added to this nice literature table, where I can extract very specific information from across these papers. If I'm someone writing a research proposal, I'm not really worried about results in these individual papers. I'm not worried much about the entire part of the discussion. I just want to see the question that each of these papers have picked. I'm interested in limitations of the study. I am also slightly interested in the future directions proposed by the authors, because just between these sections, it's easy for me to see if there is a pattern of certain missing links to my research tapestry. Are there some missing pieces of the puzzle that seem to be so important that so many papers keep talking about this missing piece, but somehow nobody has been able to plug this gap or find a solution to this problem? If I can pick the problem and come up with a solution, that would be a good research proposal in itself. I don't have to always reinvent the wheel. I can just pick problems with the wheel and then sort it for a better, efficient driving experience. Now, all of these tools I'm talking here would work really great if we are talking about a narrative review. But what happens when I am to do something more structured like a systematic review? So on systematic reviews, every single step of the process has to be documented, which means the tools that work so far might not work. I might have to look for other tools that are specifically built for SLRs, like Ryan, for instance, where you can take collective decisions on the paper selection, and also it offers some support on the extraction part as well. With the release of AI tools like AutoSR, the entire question of where do humans stand on the research ecosystem was rekindled last year, because this tool here can run or can create an entire systematic literature review in a few hours, what normally takes months or sometimes 2.5 years when it is exhaustive, can be done in a few hours. If so, and the accuracy was also not really bad enough. So as these AI tools evolve over time, should we humans step aside and hand over the major part of data extraction and analysis to these AI tools is a question. It is still an open-ended question. But when we look at the ethical perspective with respect to these literature search tools, not much ethics to consider, because these tools, they are not the end in themselves. They serve a certain purpose along the entire process of literature search. They don't take decisions for you, but rather they act as these faithful assistants who go run around, pick the most appropriate papers, and you still have major control over what happens to these papers, what papers get saved, and what get rejected out when used rightly. I think these set of tools are one of those tools which have very limited controversy around their use when it comes to the ethical perspectives. The problem with AI in the past 3 years is we want everything to be fancy, we want everything to have an AI component to it. Sometimes this clouds our reasoning to see that there are tools like Obsidian, for instance, which do not have an AI component in their primary interface, but still do a great job of whatever they are doing. Obsidian, for instance, in knowledge management systems, where at one place you can manage all of your different kinds of documents. PDFs can be thrown in, PPTs can be thrown in, figures, links, normal text interface. And yes, Obsidian is pretty close to what Notebook LM and Notion can do, but it offers much more on the free version. Now, reading scientific papers, especially when you are a young researcher not much acquainted with the field, was definitely a daunting task for all of us. If I were doing my PhD, my early years of research at the moment, I would not shy away from using tools like the Copilot option on SciSpace, where I can just upload a PDF I'm reading, and anytime I don't understand a certain section of the paper, I can just highlight the section and ask for explain text. Or I can ask the tool to go pull out related papers if I find certain parts of the text really interesting. This tool not just gives me papers related to the entire paper I'm reading that I can easily find from the reference list, but it will help me find additional references for very specific sections of the manuscript that can come in really handy when you're a young researcher still trying to figure out your way around these papers. Yes, this tool can also summarize. It can also give you ready-made summaries. It can also make you lazy. I can just throw in a PDF version of the paper or a few papers in some of the tools and then let the tool summarize for me without taking the effort of reading the paper. Now, that could be disastrous. That could mean that I am not fact-checking the information coming out of this AI. And as good as these tools are at summarizing, they don't always understand the nuances, the depths of scientific research at times. So when I let the tool take over the reading process, it is problematic. But when I use the tool to augment my reading process to get quick explanations on some of these very tough lines, very cryptic lines that can appear on these papers, then I guess I'm using it right. The other ways in which AI can come in handy in understanding literature is when they offer tools like Speechify and listening.io, for instance, where I don't have to sit down and read papers always. I can just upload my papers, any form of the papers, into these tools and listen to the papers as I am doing something else. This is important because it gives me an additional medium through which I can interact with these papers. And these tools, by extension, can also be used for listening to my own content because we don't have MS Word, though MS Word does have an option where it can read aloud content. We don't always carry MS Word around in all our smart devices. With such tools, I can have my notes uploaded into any of these tools on my smart device and I can listen to my own writing. Why is this important? This is important because reading saturates your brain after a certain level of revisions. It's very difficult for a person to catch errors on their own writing. They are too close to it to see the flaws. So in that case, it helps me if I can just listen to my own writing, especially those sentences that are really convoluted, words that make no sense whatsoever, and transitions that are clumsy. They stick out like a sore thumb when you listen to the content, helping me be a better writer in turn. Now, summarizing tools, most of the tools we talked about until this point, they also have a feature of summaries. But then there are also exclusive tools like Scholarly, for instance, which are built for summarizing papers into these nice flashcards, into PPTs, into a small set of notes, and so on. Summarizing is where it gets problematic with AI because these tools, most of the tools have evolved beyond the question of accuracy. There was a time when we were accusing these tools of not being accurate enough. They were almost closely in lines with ChatGPT in terms of giving in the wrong sources, quoting sources that did not exist, and so on. But over the years, these academia specific or research specific tools have definitely evolved to the point where we no longer get to complain about the accuracy. but these tools still lack the nuance of human reading. They are not exactly as good at catching patterns which are not obvious. And also, AI summarized content is still AI generated content. For these reasons, summarizing tools have to be used really cautiously. But when you're talking about tools like AudioPen, which are good transcribers, where it's like having a personal assistant trail you all along the day, capturing your thoughts, converting them into written content, but then also cleaning up your content, proofreading, and giving you something really good enough and formal to use as a starting point, there are not much real problems. One of the concerns I might have is about data privacy. I might not dictate the most sensitive content into audio pen, but if it is everyday writing, if it is just bits and pieces of my literature review or bits and pieces of my proposal, then I would definitely use these tools because I don't have to sit down at a system. I don't have to always have a proper setup for me to write. I can just jot down my thoughts as I go. I can just dictate these notes into my smartphone. And at the end of the day, I can collect all of these thoughts in a well written format, properly proofread and polished as well, helping me definitely get on the writing process much easier. Now, using AI for generating ideas or using AI as assistants to quickly go grab those ideas you know exist somewhere but you're not sure where they exist is something completely different from using AI for creating images. Not that written content does not have copyright issues, but these copyright issues seem to be much starker, or rather, publishers and other players are much more worried about copyright issues when it comes to images. For that reason, publishers explicitly ban the use of AI generated images within the manuscript. Using AI for graphical abstracts are even not allowed at the moment. So, despite the availability of quite a number of AI tools for generating images, AI generated images are still not allowed within the publishing space, but you can still use them on your presentations to kind of jazz them up a bit if you are interested. So, are there tools that can actually help with image creation? Yes, one of the fields where there are quite a high number of publications include the medical and health sciences field. So, in such fields, there are exclusive tools like BioRender for creating different kinds of images. But in all the other respects, so specifically when we are talking about social sciences, management sciences, and so on, where there are specific kinds of images that have to be generated, and you will have to look for tools which give you complete control over the final output. It could be a flow chart, it could be a simple summary of a proposal, it could be your Gantt charts to explain the timelines of the project, or it could be, say, a lean proposal, for instance. So, all of this is okay to be made with AI. The only condition you should be looking for is where these outputs are completely editable. Every single text has to be editable. In that case, you can consider using hybrid tools like eDrawMax, which do have an AI component into them, but the final output is completely editable, which means you get the structure quickly, you get the baseline quickly, but you still own the output. You have control over how your content gets presented. You can also quickly make presentations that is similar to what you can get out of Canva. And you can also make other interactive content like videos, for instance. All can happen on one platform. But Visme also offers quite a lot of control on the final output, making it much better to use than conventional tools like Midjourney, which go from prompt to the output with not much you can do in between. So with these tools, if you use the AI component, if AI design most part of the picture, one good thing you can do is just simply add a footnote saying that the image was generated using such and such AI tool, and then let the editor decide if they want to let you use the image as it is or if a revision is required. So transparency is what will keep the conversation going right now. It's better that you are upfront and transparent about the use of AI tools rather than waiting for a reviewer to point it out to add declarations at a later point in time. AI definitely has made processing data much more easier. And with quantitative data, yes, learning Python, R, and mastering SPSS is still the best way to go. But in cases where you want to explore AI tools for analyzing quantitative data, one of the good places to start is Julius, a tool that has been quite reliable for the past 2+ years at least, where you can hold conversations like what you would do with ChatGPT. You can upload your data, a simple Excel sheet, and you can describe the data to Julius and ask for suggestions as to what kind of statistical tool will help you achieve the insight you're looking for. You can also directly go in and say, the data in columns 1, 2, 3, and 4 have to be processed in a certain way. Say run an ANOVA on columns 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the tool will go ahead, convert your natural language prompt into a Python code. And this Python code is editable. You can check the Python code. This is where humans with certain skills become valuable. Though the tool can create a code, a tool cannot vet itself to see if it is right or wrong. This is where human intervention becomes important to see that the code written is good enough. It's exactly trying to do what your natural language prompt asks it to do. And then the tool runs the code on your data, comes back with the insight you are looking for. And then one simple prompt where you ask the tool to convert the insight into a visual, the tool can do that as well. It also creates a very base minimal visual. Say in case of an ANOVA, you want to follow it up with a box plot, that is possible. Or you want to do a post-hoc analysis after running an ANOVA, that is also possible. All of these through simple natural language prompts is what makes these tools really interesting. Now, Julius works with quantitative data. But what happens with quantitative data, like focus group data, interview data, for instance, where gathering insights is a bit more nuanced and it takes a bit more of language processing to gather insights, to see patterns across the replies or responses from multiple users, for instance. There are tools like Insight 7 that offer to do this, to get you insights from qualitative data, which is much more diverse sometimes. How about managing these references? Considering that reference management is one of the Achilles heels, I would say, of research writing. AI help us manage references. We don't exactly need an AI to manage references, I would say, considering we already have amazing tools like Zotero and Mentally, which help you manage your literature, manage your citations and references within multiple platforms as well. But if you are insistent on having an AI tools, there are AI tools that can help you manage references like, say, you have Petal AI, you have Tricks, for instance, which can help you change styles for your references and so on. But reference management and managers as a whole might become redundant in the coming years if we are to embrace writing AI tools like Paperpal, Trinka, Jenny, for instance, because several of these AI tools that have a writing component, that have an editing component to them, those tools are also slowly building in their own reference management systems, which means you don't need a writer, you don't need a separate reference manager. These two are combined into one interface, and most of them do work within your MS Word interfaces, making life pretty easier. Tricks can come in handy for quick conversion of references when there is no other code. Now, when it comes to languages, this is where the use of AI gets a bit tricky, because English has been sometimes a problem for researchers from countries where English is not their first language. Just because the language is not good, good research sometimes does get swept under the carpet simply because the language could not meet up to the standards, or rather, the meaning could not be conveyed effectively to the pan global audience that most research really caters to. Now, should we allow AI tools to level the field? Is a question. So, when we look at it from a very simpleton frame of view, we feel that yes, this is a great boon for researchers who don't have the same access, who know several other languages except for English, who do good research as well. But this also gets problematic because where do you draw the line? Where do you use AI to just hone on your language, where do you not use AI? Because several of these polishing tools, language editing tools, PaperPal, for instance, which is from Heritage, have really crossed over the boundary of being simple language polishing tools. PaperPal, for instance, now is the super tool where you can start with a base idea, brainstorm with the tool, use it as a soundboard for expanding on the idea. You can create an outline. The tool will also help you find information under each of these subheadings with proper citations, with a properly generated reference list. It even helps you manage your references and citations. It has an inbuilt library where you can store your literature. It has proofreading capabilities. It has an AI reviewer. It has several checks inbuilt, whatnot. So PaperPal is one of the top tools which offers a complete solution for your writing requirements. All of this within your MS Word interface or Google Docs interface or with LaTeX applications like Overleaf for instance. So this is where it begs the question of where do we stop these tools? What is okay? What is not okay? Nobody has the answers at the moment. So one simple preemptive step you can have when using such extensive tools is to have a system in place where you can highlight information that you gather using an AI tool so that there's a clear distinction between what was AI generated, what was generated by you or the human author group, and at a later point in time, out these AI written or AI generated sections to ensure that your paper is still yours and the AI content is less as well. Not a fan of AI content detectors, but when we are talking about ethics, the line has to be drawn somewhere. But where, by whom, what is right, what is wrong is not a question that we have answers to at the moment. Maybe down the lane, we will reimagine this entire idea of research because we cannot fit AI into existing systems. Existing systems were not built for AI, they are not AI proof, be it the assessments that we have, the assignments that we have for students, or the research paper model we have today. It has been made kind of obsolete with the introduction of AI. So the problem is not quick band-aids like building better AI content detectors. It is going back to the drawing board and reimagining research communication, and teaching as a whole. So when we were all young researchers, I'm pretty sure most of the young researchers found writing their thesis one of the most daunting parts, especially filling up the literature review. How we wish there was a magic wand which can kind of get this job done, because it is easy to sit across the labs 24/7, run experiments, collect data, run around different cities to find the right participants even and collect information. But what was difficult was to sit down and actually do a literature review. And that dream of having a magic wand did come true with tools like Jenny, where with one exhaustive prompt, you can just set the tool to finish up a good enough literature review. With tools like Answer This, for instance, you can have a 5,000, 6,000 word literature review whipped up in 2 to 3 minutes with proper citations. And most of the deep review tools or deep research tools from SciSpace, Answer This, Elicit, they can give you complete literature reviews, 5,000, 6,000 words with citations, with references, all in under 2 to 3 minutes at the max, even when you're working on a very glitchy internet connection. Now, this begs the question of where does the role of a human researcher end? How far can we let the AI really run the show? Let's hope we have answers soon. Formatting manuscripts is, I think, the only aspect of manuscript writing which unnecessarily takes away a lot of time from the researcher, because you are expected to present certain margins, maintain certain font types, font sizes, spaces, and whatnot. And also, there are word count limits on the manuscripts. We don't always have much reliable tools to do this, but SciSpace has been at the forefront of giving solutions for manuscript formatting. And now SciSpace has an exclusive agentic AI application that can help you format your manuscripts as required by several journal guidelines. So if you are at a crossroad, you can of course try it. The next challenge to be tackled with manuscripts is looking beyond the abstract to conclusion block because there are so many things that have to be taken care of in the title page, so many things to be taken care of in the declarations, references. You'll have to check if references are old, if all references have citations, all citations have references, the citations for your figures and tables and more. PaperPal has a solution for this in the form of manuscript check, where you can upload your completed manuscripts and the tool checks your manuscript for close to 30 different aspects, the generic aspects that are expected out of a manuscript. This check for a journal, even after running a manuscript check from PaperPal, you still have to cross check your manuscript with the submission guidelines of your particular journal to ensure all criteria are met. But the overarching stuff is taken care of by manuscript check from PaperPal. Now, no matter how careful you are in preparing the manuscript, when the manuscript goes through this much dreaded process called peer review, most manuscripts do get ripped apart. So, is there a way that this can be avoided, or can the damage be minimized? As peer review process is one of the longest blocks that take up so much time in the entire publication process. Each round of peer review takes at least 2 to 3 months when done correctly, which means if your paper undergoes around 4 rounds of peer review, that is easily 1 year delay from submission of your manuscript to the actual publication. How can we reduce the number of peer reviews? Simply by submitting a manuscript that is much better, simply by preemptively addressing what potential comments the peer reviewers can offer you. And here, if you have mentors who are good at reviewing papers, who are willing to take this additional load of reviewing your papers and giving you critical review, there is nothing like that. But in cases where that is not possible, there are AI tools like Paper Wizard, which are slowly, I'm not calling any of them perfect yet, but they are slowly building to have a system where you can have a great mock peer review and you can revise your manuscript based on these mock peer review comments. The end result is that your manuscript is better. The journal editors are happy because they get to start with a good enough manuscript. The peer reviewers are also happy because most of the critique that they have has been addressed already. And on your side, you're happy because your manuscript underwent just 1 or 2 rounds of peer review, saving you months of toil in actually getting your paper published. Now, with respect to the last 3 tools, when we are talking about tools for checking your manuscript, for giving you mock peer reviews, or for editing, language, proofreading, polishing of your manuscript, these tools do not really introduce much ethical issues. When you talk about language tools, if the tools are used for grammar checks, simple language checks, it's fine. The problem is when these tools are used for paraphrasing large chunks of content, because AI paraphrased content is also AI generated content at the moment. An AI content detector will not be able to differentiate between a content that was rewritten 100 times by a human and just once paraphrased using an AI tool, because AI content detectors look at the final output, and if there are AI flags on the final output, no matter how much of human effort went into the paper will still be flagged as AI generated. So, yes, proofreading, yes. If you're thinking about paraphrasing, using AI is a bad choice. But with proofreading tools, with formatting tools, with mock peer review tools, these tools don't make major changes into your manuscript. They check your manuscript, give you a report, and you have complete control over what changes go into the manuscript. In most cases, you're the one who's making the changes. Therefore, no concerns of AI content, no concerns of ethical breaches on your actual writing process. But there is a much larger threat with these tools. What you will have to check is you have to check for the data privacy policies across these tools, because you are handing over a raw manuscript, a result that came out of 2-3 years of efforts, intense research and writing, and you cannot afford to have the manuscript privacy of the manuscript breached before it gets published. So anytime you use some of these tools, do not take anyone's word for granted. You do your homework, check for the privacy policies, and ensure that the privacy policies are airtight so that your paper, your data, your research is safeguarded. Now, good research does not only come from good researchers, it also comes from the fact that you have good enough funding to explore whatever that you're trying to do. So are there AI tools that can help me with research proposals and in helping me find the appropriate grant agencies, especially the grants that are open right now and are a good match to my proposal? Yes, the good news is tools exist to do that, like Atom, for instance. The bad news is that ATAM works only for US grants, will not work in the Indian context. So if we have an equivalent to ATAM, then you will have an interface where you can prepare your proposal, and the AI will automatically match your proposal to any open funding opportunities that are available at the moment, and you can go ahead and submit your proposal also from within the same platform. I do wish we have something like that, but I have tried finding an equivalent. I don't see any at the moment. How about making presentations? Considering that making those midnight PPTs are a part of academia, how good are AI tools for making presentations? Here again, just like with any other AI tool, there are good tools like Dictopus, Gamma. I'm not sure how many of you use Dictopus, but I'm sure most of you use Gamma. Dictopus started out pretty strong early, but I guess Gamma is the most popular one at the moment. You have Prezi, you have Beautiful AI, and 100 other options. Just like with any other AI tool, most AI tools, or almost all the AI tools, they work great in the hands of an expert or a semi-expert. People who know what the output has to be, they can vet the output, they can quickly weed out what is not accurate. The problem is when young researchers who don't understand the subject fully, when they decide to use these AI tools to go from a prompt to the final deck, that is when it gets a bit problematic. A better way to use these AI tools is when you're not going in with a simple prompt, but rather you have already done your homework, you know what your presentation has to look like, you have the outline, you have the notes jotted down. You can simply upload your notes. It can be a picture, it can be a Word document. These tools take very varied kinds of documents as the input, and then you can ask these tools to build a deck based on your notes. I think that is the best way to use these presentation makers. At the end of the day, good talks are not about good PPTs or decks. Good talks come from good communicators, and considering academia has a lot of talking going around, it's easy, or rather, it's important to have tools like Poised, for instance, which can act as your speaking coaches, especially for your presentations, where you can finish your presentation in the middle of the night and then just sit with these tools on a video call to present your work, get feedback on the use of words, your pace. Some of these tools, when they advance further, I'm sure they'll also talk about body language, they'll talk about eye contact and whatnot, helping you hone on your speaking skills, which will make sure your presentations are much better. Now, over the past 3 years, one inevitable question that has been asked across these AI sessions is, okay, Soumya, it's all great that you're telling us about 100 different AI tools, but can I have just one or two tools that will take care of most of my requirements? It's pretty exhausting to keep track of so many tools, to keep these many tools logged in, and then also to avail the prime version, pro version of these tools, because almost all the tools I discussed today, they are not free tools, they are freemium tools, which offer very little free for you to check them out. But if you want to get the best out of these tools, you still have to go for the paid version. So is there one tool where I just pay, I get the subscription, it does most of the work around scientific writing and publishing? A year ago, if you had asked me this question, my answer would be sorry, such a tool does not exist. But today, the answer has evolved to say that yes, agentic AI like SciSpace do have the potential to be your one-stop solution for all your requirements around scientific writing and publishing. The problem boils down to the cost taken. Conventional, the standard version of SciSpace, or even the deep review feature, just one step below the deep review feature, will cost you around 700 to 800 rupees a month. But with respect to agentic AI, for very limited number of credits, you have to shell out around 5,000 every month to get access to the complete version of agentic AI. And that also happens only when you go for the annual subscription, which means at one go, you'll have to shell out close to 50,000-60,000 plus tax, I believe, for having access to agentic AI. But they do a good job at the moment, and I'm pretty sure they'll evolve to get better over the years as well. Now that we have talked about different tools, what are the ethics around these tools? I have already covered the ethical concerns for each category of tools as we went along, but overarchingly, if there is one thing that publishers do not want us to do, it is to let these tools behave like co-authors, where these tools contribute to such an extent that they qualify to become a co-author. And in no case can AI be added as a co-author to one of your papers at the moment. This did happen, and publishers did wake up with a huge shock, and they all agree that no, AI cannot be a co-author. Where can AI be used without much concerns? You can use, there are again two schools of thoughts here. On one side, there are people who agree that you can use AI in the very early stages for brainstorming, for ideation, and then you can build on the idea generated by AI. But the question is, if you let AI come out with all the ideas, and if you're just the writer, if you're just the aggregator on the project, does that make you a good researcher? Is the question. Some argue that AI should be allowed in the later stages just for proofreading, restructuring, and so on. Now, though this does not really raise any existential crisis questions around what is the role of a human researcher, this does introduce the problem of AI generated content when the manuscript is run through AI content detectors. So you will have to find the right balance. You can use AI for brainstorming outside of your manuscript. You can use AI for polishing for grammar. Anything in between has to be always declared appropriately using the appropriate declaration statement. So one tip that I always have is never mix your brainstorming canvas with your writing canvas. Have one platform where you brainstorm, where you play around with ideas, where you co-create with AI. But then when it comes to the actual draft of the manuscript, do not copy paste any content from anywhere. Just like how you would not do it without paraphrasing, don't include AI written content as well. Instead, read AI content, read content that are brought from different sources. Go back to the original sources, get the information, and you do the paraphrasing and writing. That is the most ethical way to go around this. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. These AI content detectors, are they good enough? No, they are not. They are problematic simply because you cannot differentiate between AI generated content and human generated content, considering that all AI generated content are some versions of human content, because we train these AI tools using human written, human generated data, which means there are going to be similarities, there are going to be certain a lot of overlaps as well, right? So how do we tackle this? The ideal way is to do away with AI content detectors and rethink frameworks to ensure that despite the availability of AI tools, the human skill part of the task can still be evaluated one way or the other. Simply introducing AI content detectors are not going to work, because these AI content detectors have already made us lose some of our favorite words like nuance, tapestry, delve, and so on. Just because ChatGPT uses these words happen to be my favorite words as well. And now I am scared to use these words in my writing. And at least speaking, nobody can claim that I use AI generated content for the sessions, but I'm really scared of using these words on my LinkedIn post, for instance, because there will be one or the other person popping up out of nowhere to accuse me of having used AI for generating my LinkedIn posts and comments and whatnot, despite me spending hours actually sitting down to write those things. So AI content detectors are very partial towards people who do not know the language, but then also to people like Taruchi who know the language way too well. So just looking at sentence complexity, these fancy terms like perplexity, burstiness will not help solve this crisis of overuse, over reliance of AI. It is going to take much more work than that. Now, the other doom of this AI ecosystem are humanizers. So can I use a humanizer to humanize my AI generated content so that AI content detectors do not detect it? Has been a very annoying question. And it's a very scary question as well. So, where are we really headed? We have companies that released AI tools, then companies that decided that, okay, AI generated content is not good. So, they developed AI content detectors. And then some rebels wanted to rebel against these content detectors, so they developed humanizers. And recently, Turnitin developed a feature on its AI content detector called the anti-humanizer. So AI content detector, humanizer, now the anti-humanizer.
Hello.
what is next. So what happens next? Who benefit out of all of this? Definitely not the researchers, just the companies that are able to come up with these tools. So are we going to keep feeding into this frenzy is a question that we should all ask. There is this nice story in Greek mythology which talks about how fire originated in the human hands. There was a time when fire belonged only to the gods, and it was at this time that a young god called Prometheus, he was very fond of humans. So Prometheus decides one day that these poor humans are suffering too much. If they have fire, their lives might be slightly better. So he brings fire from the heavens down to the humans, and at least as per the mythology, this is how fire was discovered by the humans. I'm not sure how true this is, but I'm pretty sure that when fire was discovered for the first time, not all humans were happy. Some of our ancestors, they would have been pretty excited about this thing because now they can keep themselves warm, they can see in the dark, they can travel at night, they can cook their food, they can protect themselves from animals and so on. But I'm sure there would have been a good chunk of our pessimistic ancestors who saw the dangers of this bright blazing thing, saw that this thing could destroy entire humankind, the forest, the earth they knew as of then. And both of them were right. Fire has lot many good things, everything. But then the pessimists were not wrong again. But because we had the pessimists today, we have systems in place that can help us use fire in a pretty safe environment. Even today, if you let fire run amok, it is going to destroy everything we know. But because we have these systems in place to correctly use fire, we are able to get the best out of it. So where am I going with this story? Today, we have a new fire amongst us, and that fire is called AI or Gen AI specifically. AI, Gen AI is scary on most days. It's pretty confusing on the other days. It is throwing the entire humankind into existential crisis, at least those humans who know about Gen AI. We have started questioning our role. We have started questioning our place in this entire chain for sure. But that does not make AI the villain. It all boils down to good decisions. So I hope we take the right decisions. We use AI for the right things, where we outsource mundane tasks, where we simplify our lives while retaining the core human values and human skills, because that would be the right way to use any technology. Just like everything else before AI, the problem is not technology, the problem is still humans who make decisions as to how they want to use technology. On that note, thank you for your attention. And this is where you can reach me beyond the session. The QR code will take you to my LinkedIn page where I write at least 2 to 3 days in a week around AI tools for research, but then also AI tools and the challenges of using AI within teaching ecosystems. I'm not great with calls, but I'm good with WhatsApp. So if you have a question, if you want to share something around AI for research and education, you can always drop me a text on WhatsApp. And for any other official communication, it could be for sessions or it could be for editing your manuscripts, you can just drop an email into our official ID and me or someone from the team will get back to you. And recently we decided that we are going to put together certain recordings from open sessions into one YouTube channel so that you have access to sessions, small notes on different aspects around AI for research and teaching in one place. And this is the code that will take you to the YouTube link. And this is where you can leave your feedback for me personally about the session and where else would you like to see the use of AI in research and education. And as a thank you note, when you submit the feedback form, you get a PDF list of tools that you can use. So it will be a list of all the tools we discussed. And for each aspect, there will also be alternatives included into the list so that you have a ready to refer list you can use. I'm going to share these information as links as well so that it is easier for you to have access to them. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can just go ahead, drop them into the chat box. But then you can, also unmute yourself and ask questions if you're allowed to do that. I'm not sure. I don't see any questions in the chat box. It's on the Q&A tab, is it? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take this question. So can we use ChatGPT for summarization of the paper? I'm also dropping it into the Q&A box so that you can have access to the links in the Q&A box as well. Yeah, to answer the question, ChatGPT to summarize the paper is okay as long as you're just trying to get a quick overview of the paper and you're not going to build your own manuscript or your literature review based on the summary generated by ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of the AI tools for that matter. Yeah. So I might not share the PPT as it is, but I think you will have access to the recordings. You should reach out to the organizers for that. But ensure that you submit the feedback form and you get a PDF list of all the tools we have um, discussed about. And Dr. Chandra Kumar, the LinkedIn profile is just there on the chat box. It's also here on the Q&A, so you can just get it from there. So to answer your question in simple terms, yes, AI has already been having quite an impact on the employment scenario. There are companies that have laid off quite a large number of employees because their work could be replaced by AI. So yes, the employment scenario is definitely changing big time with tech companies, even otherwise with the advent of AI. Just looking up for the scroll bar. So how to create a graph of all algorithms used in a literature review. I am not exactly sure what that question is supposed to mean, Ms. Jayapratibha. Can you expand on that a bit so that we can answer it? So I think as a reviewer, there is a slight bottleneck here because when you are the author, you can use AI to review your manuscript. You can apply as much AI as you want because you own the manuscript. But when you're a reviewer, you really cannot apply AI tools to the manuscript because you don't own the manuscript. And in cases of potential data breaches, this could be disastrous. I think for now, until you really have institutional approved or publishers approved AI tools that you can use as a reviewer, finding the originality has to still happen manually. You cannot simply upload the manuscript and check for originality, but you can just take up the core message of the manuscript and throw it into these literature matrix tools like SciSpace, Elicit, Answer This, so that you can also set filters and then see if there are any potential manuscripts that match the same theme of the paper that you are reviewing. I do wish that there was a system where you can simply upload a paper to do these checks. But one problem is, yeah, you have all these general tools where you can do it. The major problem is the data privacy and that you don't have any authorship or you don't have any real control over the manuscript that you receive as a reviewer. So you still have to do certain things manually, I believe. Humanizer detector is a detector that can even detect humanized text. Turnitin has that option now. How do you identify Q1 journals? Simply by setting the filter to Q1 on your Scopus search. So when you are searching for your journals on, say, sites like Scopus, there are filters you can set. So you can just set the filter to identify only Q1 journals for your topic of interest. So yes, you have my details here. Mr. Pankaj, I really don't have a suggestion for best humanizer because I don't think humanizers actually do a good job. Humanizers kind of dumb down the content. They miss the entire soul of the writing. They do everything in their power to avoid AI content detectors. They don't really add value to your text. And to the eyes of a really trained reviewer or an editor, a humanized text will just stick out. So I really don't see humanizers as a solution. It's fun to play around with humanizers, but beyond that, I don't see any real value to them. So can we trust the information generated by ChatGPT? I am still skeptical about ChatGPT, but with these academic tools like Consensus, Elicit, Answer This, PaperPal, the information so far has been pretty accurate. And yeah, and also I'm not really worried about the accuracy due to the frameworks I have in place because I'm using these AI tools just as assistants to quickly bring me information. If I have a young student, if I ask them a question, I will not expect them to do the fact checking and always come up with accurate answers. I, as the be as the person who's slightly above the above the assistant, several ranks above in most cases, I will always fact check before I take in an information and include into my manuscript. That is the same way that I would use an AI tool as well. I let the AI bring me all information at once, but when I decide I want to use this information in my manuscript, I'll always do a human check. So if you do that, it shouldn't be a problem. I don't think I have a specific percentage there, Mr. Amit, for you. But at every single stage, as I mentioned, there is an AI tool that can help you. So I am willing to use AI tools at every single stage while still holding the control. To answer your question in a very simple way, I let Litmaps bring me literature, but I'll also cross-check the availability of literature on Google Scholar. I let SciSpace build the literature matrix for me, but I'll not copy the information. I'll make that to have an overarching view of what is out there in literature. The decision is still mine, the writing would still be mine. I would let PaperPal proofread my manuscripts, but I would still check every single grammar check that goes into my manuscript. I'll not allow an AI tool to make any global changes on my manuscript. So I don't have a percentage for you, but I'm sure AI can help you at every single stage. I don't really have a solution there, Mr. Pankaj. If any, I would say, please do not use a humanizer. That kind of spoils the entire writing style in most cases. I'm not sure which conference asks for 0% AI content, Mrs. Radha, because it's unachievable in most cases, right? Most of the publishers, most of the conferences, they have a tolerance of around anywhere between 10 to 20% of AI content is what I have seen in general. So when it comes to plagiarism, 10% is the threshold. When it comes to AI content, I think you should keep it under 15%, or in worst case scenario, say in case of conference abstracts where the content is really very small, very pithy content, keep it under 5 to 7% is the most you can do. 0% is not always achievable. I'm not sure how to bring it down to 0%, considering there are going to be overlaps. Very few cases where you can really get 0%. It's okay to have a small overlap is what I feel. You can use SciSpace, Mrs. Lakshmi, for summarizing your literature survey, provided that is just the starting point. That does not become your actual literature survey. It's okay. So what do? I have a team of editors. So as a person, as an individual, I majorly work with faculty across institutions, across disciplines, to train them in scientific writing and publishing. I also work with faculty across institutions to explore how best AI can be introduced into classrooms for their teaching requirements, right from lesson plans to assessments, what AI can do, what it cannot do, and how can we gently introduce students to start using AI without them missing out on developing their core skills. This is what I do as a person. And when it comes to my startup, it's essentially a team of editors who edit manuscripts, who proofread manuscripts, who restructure your manuscripts to give you a better chance of moving your manuscript away from desk rejection and getting you into the peer review and ultimately into the published phase. I'm not sure if I am the right person to suggest a career path for Gen Z, but what I would say is, for students, if you find there is a very nuanced process, programming is still not dead. Do not give up on programming. Do not give up on learning the core skills of writing, programming, or hands-on skills that would still have some value even with the introduction of AI. Because right now, nobody can predict what the next half a decade or decade will look like. Technology is one thing, but policies is what will still decide how much of carriers will exist and what will get washed out. So for now, I would still be the same sincere student, learning every skill that is possible. The more difficult the skill, the more interested the student has to be in learning the skill. so that they can really stand out in today's really crowded world. I think that part has not really changed much. So creating supporting documents as in Mrs. Okay, Miss Pratibha, if you mean cover letters, summaries, highlights, and so on, I think AI tools do a good job of helping you create that. And some of these documents, you don't even have to worry about AI content. You can just go ahead and use them. And with respect to tools for plagiarism, I would strongly urge you to not use free AI tools, because if a tool is free, normally your data is the price you're paying for using the tool. And plagiarism check is a pretty costly affair. For a plag check to be really accurate, the tool has to have access to all paid papers as well. And that does not come for free. Why will a tool pay to get access to papers and then offer the plag check for free to you? Makes no sense as a business model, right? I would rather go with institutional Turnitin access or any of the other reliable but institution associated tools for doing my plag check. So Psi and Q1 is a term that is used across multiple indexing. Q1 means it's a unlike percentages, it's a percentile metric. So Q1 exists across multiple indexing. Psi is just one of the indexing. Q1 is a category of journals. They are the top-notch journals, no matter which indexing you are talking about. Most of these indexing sites, they have 4 quartiles, Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. And Q1 is your top level journals, the best journals in the classification or the category. And to find appropriate journals, one of the good choices is to use journal finders. I have a very detailed post on LinkedIn. You can just write to me, I'll share the post. But journal finders are not sufficient. You should have a multi-part strategy to find the right journal, starting by screening your own references in your manuscript, your own literature collections to find where most of your papers are coming from. And then determining if the journal is good, if the journal is a properly indexed journal. So it's a step-by-step process. Is the journal good enough? Is it legitimate? Does it have an APC? Can I afford the APC? Is my paper a good match to the aims and scope of the journal? Even if so, is the journal really interested in publishing papers in my field in the recent days? So these are like checkboxes that you have to check one after the other before you can find the right journal. You will have a detailed post on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn details are just above you. Right? Yeah, so if you cannot join the WhatsApp group, just drop me a message on WhatsApp. I'll just add you to a different group. You cannot use notebook LM pictures in your paper unless those images are editable. If the final output is editable and you can verify every single aspect of the image, then yes. If not, you should be careful. Perplexity is definitely a good choice, especially considering that it offered most of its advanced features for ATAL users recently. But that is still an AI. I would just treat it like how I would treat any other AI. And Mr. Ronak, I don't think AI is better than humans, because there are certain things that humans are really good at. AI follows rules. It just can regurgitate what already exists. So you can use an AI to generate all the Ghibli images that you want. But will a Ghibli studio be born out of an AI? I'm not really sure. So I'm still a fan of humans, though I talk about AI day in and day out. To answer your question, Mrs. Lakshmi, I don't have a suggestion on top of my head at the moment. So Drillbit or Turnitin depends on. So Turnitin is obviously the most popular choice. So Drillbit also, I have seen quite a number of institutions use Drillbit as well, depending on what your institution wants. So where are you submitting your thesis or your paper to? Make sure you use the same tool that the publisher or the institution uses. If the institution uses Drillbit, go with Drillbit. Most of the publishers, they use Turnitin. So Turnitin happens to be a better choice. And Scopus index journals, Mr. Satish, you will find them on the Scopus site. I cannot, it's not like you have so many journals and you will have to pick a journal for your particular paper. You cannot even pick journals in your field. every paper has to be very carefully matched with its target journal. So it's not just a case of having a list of journals. Okay. And I think that kind of brings me to the end of the Q&A. And yeah, I guess that's that on my end. And yeah, there's just 1 minute for the other speaker to join in. So considering that, I would say my goodbyes. You have my contact
Priyanka,
details. You can
ma'am.
reach her as well.
Hello, ma'am. Priyanka, please, can you on your screen for a formal vote of thanks?
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. I am expressing my sincere gratitude to Dr. K.S. Soumya for delivering an insightful and thought-provoking session on harnessing AI ethically for scientific writing and publishing. Your session clearly highlighted how the AI can be used with an ethical mindset, and I am sure our participants have understood the areas emphasized by you, and they will be easily able to use the cutting edge platforms to successfully generate their desired results. Thank you again, ma'am, for your time, sincere efforts, and exceptional expertise in delivering a thoughtfully engaging session. Thank you, ma'am.